with the 365 London user group brought in by Bibbs. But I also took that experience and I created my own user group called Black Speaker Support Group and the Power Platform School. They're all virtual, so that's kind of my experience.
So for myself, as I mentioned, I originally got involved as part of what was the Dynamics 365 user group at the time. What you tend to find is that the Power Platform, we're all sort of like one big happy family. We got loads of Dynamics CRM people back in the day and then SharePoint people. So got involved as part of that and then had the opportunity to open a chapter of that user group in Manchester, where we're just trying to get back to normal now, more events really.
Awesome. Yeah, so my background for user groups comes from our Power Platform. Community Africa. So I realized that we had lots of folks out there looking for an opportunity to get into the Microsoft space. So our community started on WhatsApp, believe it or not. And now we are on LinkedIn. It is a global user group. And we have a mentoring session and a lot of collaboration with the Power Platform School.
So that's interesting. Like we've all got a slightly different background and we run our communities in different ways as well. So you can have a local community. We have several of those in the UK for Dynamics and for Power Platform. And, you know, I know Trisha runs a worldwide community and Alexio as well. They run those virtually and obviously we can do that much more easily these days. So how do you get started? It might be a question that you have. I would suggest there's a certain set of steps that you need to go through to, you know, get your user group off the ground. Getting a group of people together, obviously, that are keen to do this. And I think probably 3 or 4 or 5 people is good. You can do it on your own, but it's a lot more work, obviously. So if you can kind of spread the load, I think that's very useful. Trisha, what do you think you should do next?
I fully agree. Spreading the load, I can't stress that enough. Especially as you might have an idea, but as you want to generate that idea, getting other insights, getting other people who have that experience to validate against it, reaching out to community leaders to get their ideas, it really helps you to not make the same mistakes, but also not make it so hard to get started.
Yes, I just encourage, like, this is an interactive session. If you've got questions, please do put them in the chat on the Teams meeting, and we will get to those as we go through. Okay, Alexio, how did you kind of get your group off the ground? What sort of things did you do? You mentioned you started on WhatsApp, right?
Yep. So a very good question. So getting started is very important that we're all special here. So let's reach out to each other, group leaders, get the ideas, what's involved, what you need to do to run the user group. So from my personal experience, next month we have the Scottish Summit in Scotland. So I reached out to the group leader on how they started that experience. And then I got some ideas which then translated to Power Platform Africa community.
I think the first step really is it's getting involved really, I would say. Certainly for me, because you reached out to me originally about the user group, saying just, hey, it'd be great to see you at an event. So actually just attending an event for the first time, you actually start to meet people, and then from there, you know, who knows what could happen, you know.
That's a great point, because that's how I started. I went along to, it was quite a small event. It was here actually, right in Reading in the UK. And I just went along to attend and started to try and get to know people. And quite often actually, these sorts of meetings will have some kind of social aspect as well. So we meet up at the pub before or after. That's a really low stress way to meet people. So I definitely recommend that. And then you just kind of get to know people a little bit. And then I took the next step after maybe, I don't know, I'd attended a few meetings that I wanted to present, and that scared the life out of me, to be honest. But you know, you've got to take the step, push yourself a little bit more. And then before I knew it, I was involved in organising the user group, and then got to where I am today.
So we've got a great question from Chris here. It might be good for Alexia to answer it maybe, but what's the hardest part about starting the user group? So, I mean, for you, when you were starting it on WhatsApp, what was the big barrier for you, would you say?
So the biggest barrier for myself, for the community, as we know, WhatsApp allows you to have 257 people in the group. And out of the 257, it's not everyone who knows exactly what they want to learn in the tech, right? It's such a big space. So one of the challenges there was to then managing multiple groups, and at the same time setting up separate calls to actually understand what someone actually wants to do and what is actually their interest. I come from a Dynamics background, that might not be someone's interest as well. So someone might be interested in Microsoft Azure, AI, or other areas. So it's then now separating that interest and making sure we get a connection in the community for such a person.
I actually want to piggyback off that in terms of like the hardest part of setting up a user group, because I feel that when you start, it's really fun. It's really good and really valuable to set it up, but I can't stress enough making sure that you still carve out time for yourself, because sometimes it does have a life of its own and it
Yeah,
takes off and
100%.
it can take over a lot. So get a team around
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I think that's something to remember, particularly when you start to build some momentum, is that, nobody wants a second unpaid job, and that's what it can become, So ask for help, delegate, I would say, is really important. I'm terrible at that, as some of these guys will know. So we've got a question on Teams from Vivian. Hi, Vivian.
Hi, just a question from the chat about engagement, both in person and virtual events. It's one point is getting the people in there, but how do you keep them engaged? How do you keep them interested?
Okay, good question. Anybody?
Well, the thing is, remember, it's a community. People come to the community event for several different reasons. One, to meet people. It's really the personal aspect. If you build a relationship with people, they will come.
I think you got to mix it up as well sometimes, make it so it's not always, I guess, the same old faces talking about the same old, Dynamics, CRM plugins and all that sort of stuff. Try and maybe inject a bit more, left field stuff maybe, because it could be that, learning maybe something about like maybe Azure or maybe some M365 stuff that could be useful for attendees, and encourage people to get involved, encourage people who haven't presented before, literally almost drag them up to the stage to get them involved, and it sounds horrible, but actually, it's how you get people involved. And if you do it once and you get to the end of it, oh, that wasn't too bad, I can do it again in the future.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, make sure it touches back on the core of the user group.
Yeah.
Like, don't make it too out there. Like, if you're a Power Platform user group and you're going to talk about Azure, how does Azure relate to the Power Platform? Because they're consistently learning, then they have value. It's basically providing value.
Yeah, I think engagement is all about the content that you provide in your user groups. And if you're hitting the right spot and the sessions are popular, people will come back. I think it's more likely, at least at the beginning, you'll have the opposite problem where you need to actually build up a following. And that, just to warn everybody, that takes time. If you set your user group up and 10 people come, that's fantastic. Next time, hopefully it'll be more and then more and then more. But you have to persevere. You have to give it 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, multiple meetings. And that can feel a bit of a grind. It can feel a bit thankless at times. But if you commit, persevere, you'll be successful.
The thing as well, though, like I've seen that like you can start off and it tapers. And sometimes it is literally to do with marketing. You need to market your events. It's like word of mouth is great, but you can't rely on just word of mouth. It's just like, I hate to say it, but it's like running a business.
Yeah. You've got to market.
You have to market it.
100%. Okay, so I can see we've got hands up from Rebecca and Anna. Let's go to Anna first for a question on Teams.
Hi, everyone. So I'm picking up a question from Mulligan. And how do you curate your content for the user groups? How do you decide what to include in your sessions? Thank you.
Good question. Who wants to go?
So I can answer that. So I'm quite lazy. So what I tend to do is I talk about what I know. So if I've done something maybe interesting as part of a project, if I've done something in terms of maybe which I think could be useful for others to talk about, I just try and base it off my experience, because hopefully then I've got maybe a little bit of authority when I'm speaking about it. I sound somewhat credible. Sometimes as well, talking about stuff that I want to know more about, so actually then go off and actually do the research into it as well. Those could be good topics, I think.
Joe, can I check, Anna, is it create content or curate content?
Curate.
Curate content.
Okay, so it was a perfectly valid answer, I think. Okay. So curating the content, what we normally do for bigger events is use a website called Sessionize. So if we have multiple speakers, once you get above kind of half a dozen or 6 or 8 speakers, you have to coordinate those people, you have to contact them and everything else. When we run bigger events and we have maybe 15 or 20 speakers, we use Sessionize, which is free for free events. And that really helps organize the speaker, the call for speakers. So when you go out and say, we would like people to speak at our event, you can review those sessions as they come in. And generally, we get together about a month before the event, read through the sessions, decide on the sessions we think are most appropriate for our audience. And it's important to get to know your audience over time. And then that helps us build the agenda, and we can group similar talks together, that kind of thing. So yeah, we try not to duplicate the topics too much. But yeah, I really recommend Sessionize as, when you're doing bigger events.
The other valid and valuable thing about Sessionize, especially using it for like the bigger conferences, is the blind picking. Because one thing that you might notice is you have the same people I love to speak, so I speak everywhere. But the thing is, you might actually want new speakers. So this really allows you to blind pick just based on the topic and based on the content. But I'm actually interested in Alexio's answer, because Alexio does something slightly different to all of us in terms of curation.
Yeah, so one of the things which has been effective for our community is actually reaching out. There's a lot of folks out there who are actually looking to speak at events, and they're not so sure where to start. So most of the time I'm around social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, seeing what everyone is doing, and then reach out and say, are you able to showcase what you're showing us here on your blog or what you're writing about? That way it also helps to bring more engagement from the wider community. So it's not Alex standing in front of everyone all the time. We also have a new face, learn something new as well, something different.
Yeah, great idea. Yeah, contacting potential speakers, particularly based on the things that they're blogging about or doing YouTube videos about, I think that's a really good idea. And that translates well, I think, to hybrid events. I know we've had some questions about hybrid events. We'll come back to that. So I can see Rebecca's got her hand up. Rebecca, would you like to go with your question?
Yeah, there were multiple people actually asking about hybrid events, because how to do that, because it's quite a struggle, and it's actually a question I have myself for our user group. So,
well, you know what, we're in a hybrid event right now, and this is the best one I've seen done. So I think it's so much easier to do it now. We're kind of through COVID, or at least pretty much. And we've all learned to run our lives on Teams and have meetings on Teams or Zoom. People are very familiar with using it. So we have a user group meeting coming up at the end of June, and we're going to try this out. In particular, it was useful when we had completely virtual meetings. We could get speakers in from anywhere around the world. We had speakers from America, from Europe, from Australia, and they didn't have to travel, obviously. So it really widens your speaker pool, but also widens your audience as well. That's really important, and that's useful for hybrid events too. Tips?
But it's interesting because you mentioned that, because before COVID, with the Dynamics 365 user group, it was always that logistical hurdle to get over. So I think definitely now that you've got these modern tools, it does help you a lot more, doesn't it?
Yeah, certainly. I think when we looked at doing kind of recorded sessions before COVID, we were thinking, okay, we need some camera equipment, we need microphones and everything else. I think we could probably get away with a lot less now, and just like a Teams meeting with maybe a spare laptop, maybe some mics, but normally we hold our meetings at places that are used to running events, so they have like audio-visual equipment, like I'm wearing now, so that's helpful. You guys done any hybrid events that you can speak to?
We did a hackathon for the Power Platform School that was hybrid, and that was really interesting. It was really fun because you had the excitement from the in-person audience, but then you had the people from virtual, and they could feed off each other, and that was really cool. But you're right in terms of the technology that was used.
Yeah.
It's really the tech that makes the hybrid possible. So you really got to invest in that.
Yeah, and when we were doing purely virtual events, practice is all I would say. Same for hybrid events. Try it out, see what works, what doesn't. You might need to invest in some equipment, but generally you can do a pretty good session, because most of the sessions that we do, people are presenting, they're showing demos, that kind of thing. That works really well on Teams, and they don't necessarily have to be, pin sharp on camera to do that.
I mean, when I say equipment, I mean software.
Software.
But I was at an event in Berlin where that was going on. So you had like people from Microsoft actually dialing in from the States on Teams and doing a session on there, which was actually really good.
Yeah.
So it just, like you say, widens the pool, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, Vivian, over to you.
Yeah. We have a question in the chat about, now you talked about creating user groups, working with them in general, but what about if you want to create one in your workplace? How do you go about that?
Okay, cool. I mean, I think from my perspective, it's a similar kind of process. You need to pick a date, pick a location. Is it going to be hybrid? Is it going to be virtual? And promotion, get it out there. That might be easier in a workplace because you have different methods to communicate with people that you work with. But I think a similar sort of process.
It's similar, but it has different challenges. For one, for example, I work at Avanade and I run a user group inside of Avanade as well because
okay.
why not? But the thing is, like, the challenge is everybody's busy, everybody's working, so you've got to now deal with, okay, when can they have availability? Whereas with the user groups that we run, they'll take time, so they're actually there and they're focused. But it is the same thing in terms of ensuring that you have the topics, ensuring that you have that build, marketing, reaching out to different people, but it's still valuable.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, good. Just keeping an eye on the chat there.
See, there has been some questions about how to set up the user group thing for the very first time, and I guess it would be remiss for us not to talk about the community site, I guess, that we've got now.
100%, yeah. So this is more focused on the Dynamics 365 and Power Platform areas, which have user group websites hosted by Microsoft now. So for Dynamics, you go to community.dynamics.com. There's an area for user groups, and you create your user group on there, and then you can create your events on there. And that's actually where you publicize your events as well. I'm not sure where we stand with other communities like Microsoft 365, SharePoint, whether they have something similar. I know it's coming. I think it's coming. If you don't have that already. But yeah, Dynamics and Power Platform seem to be kind of cutting a swathe, through Microsoft in getting more involved in the community. But yeah, 100%, that is the route that we go down to communicate about our events and also set up new user groups as well.
I mean, if you're in a technology that doesn't have the communities that Dynamics as yet, I know before that we used Meetup.
Yes. Yeah, Meetup's a great site, also Eventbrite as well. If you don't have the Microsoft communities, they're really good, particularly Meetup, really good at communicating out to similar kind of events and communities as well. So people find out about your events organically. And we had really good success with getting people to events using Meetbrite.
Meetbrite. Yeah, new product.
They're going to merge. Meetbrite. Yeah, cool. Okay, good. Anna, I can see you have your hand up.
Hello again. So Jess has a question in the chat. And how would you approach people that it's not so like technology driven? How do you get to those like profiles that are not 100% involved in technology yet?
So that's definitely speaking to what we do at the Power Platform School and Power Africa community. Yeah. So from a Power Platform School perspective, we have to reach out via social media for a lot of our users because they're not natively a part of tech, and what we're trying to do is get them into tech. So our main marketing strategy is kill them on social media, literally just constantly posting about joining PPS and being a part of it.
Yeah, so for Power Platform Africa community, one of the challenges we have, some of our community colleagues, things we take for granted, to say, okay, someone can open Microsoft Teams. It's not everybody's cup of tea. So one of the most important things we do is to help them understand exactly what it is when you speak about Microsoft Teams, so they can actually use the tool to actually for the collaboration part of it. And at the same time, do a demo once they're comfortable to show them what to click, what to actually use. So for example, if you want them to come on camera, where do they actually click so they understand that? So most importantly, to get someone who's non-technical is to more or less have an open mind, to say everybody might not be equally the same as we are, not even 0.5% of that. So looking to make sure someone is got a safe space to ask any questions about that tech, because we have so many out there who are really keen to learn the tech, but they just don't know to ask the right questions. and they don't want to be judged as well. So it's important for all of us to have that open mind when we're doing that.
I think sometimes as well, maybe demonstrating the business value of what we're doing, because obviously users may not, as you say, may not be as technical, but if you actually show them, okay, well, if you actually put this in the organization, it's going to do X, Y, and Z for you, and they can see that in really sort of good terms, and that's going to hopefully get them excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to take a slightly different perspective on that, I'd just like to pick up on what Alexia says there, is that one thing that really drew me into getting involved in the user groups is that you could come along and ask any question you like, and there are no egos, and everybody's at a different place when they're learning a new product area or a new technical area. And so, yeah, leave the egos at the door and encourage people to ask questions. I think that's really important. One area that we do cover in our user groups as well, which I think translates to other technical areas too, is that we don't just focus on the tech. That's probably about half of the sessions that we have are around, product features, what's new, doing something very technical, maybe developer focused. The other half is much more around maybe administration or business users, like business analysts. We tend to get a lot of people that they are the person that looks after that system in their company, and they want to come along to kind of hang out with other people that do the same thing. So that's another attraction. But equally, we might do topics like user adoption, change management, focus on those softer areas, even things like speaking at events as well is topics we cover. So we're not just about the tech, and I think that's important and will attract a different sort of set of people to your events too.
One of the things that I think is really great about how the user groups are set up is not only is it widening like business and tech value, but it's the different levels as well, making sure that, and this goes back to the curation question, making sure that you have stuff for, like, I would say beginners, but people who are new, but also people who are advanced and experts, making sure that you have that broad swathe of sessions.
Yes, 100%. I've forgotten the point I was going to make, but so guys, I can see Vivian's got a hand up. Let's go over to Vivian before I say what I was going to say. Hi, Vivian.
Sorry about that. I thought I would just fill in the void while you were thinking. Question about while you're doing the sessions, but the gaps you have between them. What are the exercises, the things, how do you know what to fill them with? What kind of content, what should go there?
Okay, so is that more a question of like how you structure your event, your meeting, what you have in between maybe?
That as well, but also what kind of content makes sense to put in between in order to keep the people still engaged.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so well, one thing I was going to mention is that it's important to identify your audience. Know who you're talking to. Don't make it too wide or too narrow, I would say, and that's something you may evolve over time and kind of work out where your audience sits. In terms of the sessions themselves on the day, we tend to not run super long sessions, but particularly if they're virtual. Half an hour works really well for virtual, maybe 45 minutes for in-person. You've got some time for questions and things like that. And then we have breaks throughout the day so people can change rooms or change meeting that they're in. What do we do in between those meetings other than having kind of networking opportunities?
Well, I'd say networking's the big one for me.
Yeah.
I get a lot of value out of just, seeing people talking, hearing about what they're doing, so definitely using the opportunity just to, talk to people. And it can be tricky. I've been there, going up to people and just introducing yourself. Hi, I followed you, blog for the last 2 years, all that sort of stuff. But, actually, when you start to sort of do that, it's you meet people, you engage, and you start to learn yourself, and you grow as a person. Hopefully.
I feel seen because that's what I did with I was like so starstruck, going, oh my god. But the thing is, like, one of the values and how you get people, and I mentioned this before, that it's a community. It's like if you build relationships with them, they will come.
Yeah.
And I think, especially within the UK, we have such a tight-knit relationship between the community simply because we've been going to events, and now we have WhatsApp groups on WhatsApp groups of everyone just keeping in touch. And these are people I can call on for any reason, personal or work related. and they're there for me. And seriously, like throughout the last 2 years we've had, it's been so invaluable. And that's the power of literally just going to the user group. That's actually what it's done. So having that throughout or in the middle of it, that's, I think, how you'll get them to keep coming back. One of the ways.
Yeah, no, I really agree. It's not just coming to events to kind of learn stuff. That's part of it, you know. It's also meeting people that are, you know, doing similar things maybe, or even just putting yourself out there a little bit more. I remember going to my first event and really having to kind of stretch myself to go up to somebody I didn't know and say hello and just introduce myself. You may never talk to them again, or you may, you know, have a more of a bond, and that's how community grows. And that's what we are, more than user groups. We're a community, which I think is, you know, something you should focus on. We did have a question in the chat, maybe the last question, which is around from Simon saying, when there's questions at the end of a session and everybody else is kind of piling in as well, and you know, he feels like actually, you know, he doesn't get to ask his question. But again, I sort of feel like you have to put yourself out there a little bit and not just barge your way through and get your question answered, but yeah, hang around, talk to the speaker afterwards. I love that kind of thing. I love getting questions after a session that I've done, because you know, that's an engaging conversation about the topic that you've just been speaking about. So yes, any final tips what you guys have around organizing user groups? What's been your, if you could choose one thing that you should do, put you on the spot.
Free food, free beer. Has to be said. It does get people hopefully a bit more sort of engaged, you know.
Yeah, you know, chatting to people over a drink or over some food, I think that's a really good way to engage. Yeah.
I would say what you're doing virtually, try as much as you can to make it fun.
Yes.
Because if it's just two straight faces, people get bored and people switch off. So try as much as you can to make it fun as much as possible.
And for me, it's reach out of your own network. Think about when you're marketing or when you're posting on social media that you're only going to hit the same people. Get your network to also post. So therefore, you start reaching out to other people to then broaden your.
And I think my tip's kind of related to that, in that I've run events where nobody has turned up, and that's crushing when that happens, or you only get a few people turn up, and that's normally as a result of that people just don't know about your event. It's not that they're not interested, they just didn't know. And I'll meet somebody a week later and they'll go, oh, I didn't know you had an event. Promote through whatever channel you possibly can, whether that's social channels. LinkedIn and Twitter are really popular for us, but may not be for your community. And you know, if it's people at work, obviously there's channels at work to communicate. Just think of innovative and creative ways that you can get the message out, but you've got to keep hammering it away, because not everybody is going to see that one tweet that you did about the event. Okay, good. Thanks very much for the session, and we'll see you at another one.
Thanks everyone.